All right, folks, welcome to tonight's virtual Thru-Paddler presentation. We have a pretty packed house. In fact, as I'm trying to talk, I'm still admitting people in. So we're going to try and get right to it so that we can cover as much ground as possible with Adin, BobbiJo, and Jacob. Before we get rolling, I'll introduce myself, I guess. My name's Chris Morris. I'm a Communications and Outreach Director for the Northern Forest Canoe Trail. Tonight, we are doing a virtual session with three of our 2024 Thru-Paddlers, Adin, Jacobs Johnson, BobbiJo Tallon, and Jacob Sexton. Before we get rolling, I do have a few things to share. It is my job to communicate and market things for the NFCT, so I'm going to do a little bit of that real quick. If you haven't heard, this is our 25th anniversary for the Northern Forest Canoe Trail, both as a nonprofit organization and as a physical canoe trail. We hope you'll see us at some of our events this summer. Our first few big gatherings are coming up starting in May. We have the Round the Mountain Race in Saranac Lake, New York. And then in mid-June, we have the Adirondack Paddling Symposium, which is 3 days of instruction with some really great teachers and really experienced paddlers. There's a few, that one's filling up. I would encourage you to go to AdirondackPaddlingSymposium.com and take a look if you're thinking about it. I think we're going to hit our ceiling pretty soon there. And then up in Rangeley, we have the Rangeley Aquatic Adventure Rendezvous. That's June 20th to 22nd. That's a 2-day, 40-mile stage race. And it's beautiful up there. I finally got to spend some time in Rangeley last summer, and I can vouch for just how incredible it is. We also do have some spots left on our waterway work trips. Those are the weekends with our stewardship crew. You get meals cooked for you. They take you out on some fun paddles. You put in a little bit of sweat equity on some of our stewardship projects. I think about half of those trips are full, but some of them still do have room. And then I'd also want to share that we have our first boat raffle of the year going. Our partners at Eskeef have donated a Prospector Sport made from their new T-Form-X Light. It's a super, super light, beautiful boat, really versatile for a lot of different adventuring. So we're raffling that off now through midnight, May 15th. We'll do the drawing on the 16th. All those proceeds kick in to help with our stewardship work and our community programming as well. And then this is a big one here. And it's probably a little bit past due to get to this, but every spring we do an appeal to our trail fund, which supports the stewardship program. And this year our appeal is very specific and very important. And we need to buy ourselves a new truck for our roving crew. That's the crew that travels between New York, Vermont, and New Hampshire. We've been using a 2000 Toyota Tundra for about 10 years now. It's helped us finish almost 100 projects in that time span. It's got a lot of miles. It's got a lot of dings. And, it's still functional, but we do have an Allagash crew now. So we're going to send that truck up to the Allagash crew. And we're working to raise some money with some of our donors. And hopefully some of y'all will want to chip in too to get ourselves a new truck for that roving crew. So I'm going to take all of that stuff I just talked about and drop all those links into the chat. So the waterway work trips, the events, the truck appeal, all that stuff's going to be in there. And if you have questions about anything else or anything that you hear about tonight and you need more info, you can reach out to me anytime. My email is chris@northernforestcanoetrail.org. All right, so we're done with the promos and me gabbing. We're going to move on to why you're here. I'm happy to welcome Adin, BobbiJo, and Jacob to tonight's virtual sessions. Before I hand it off, we do have a pretty full Zoom session, which means the easiest way for me to handle a question and answer session at the end is if you guys all type your questions into the chat. So just drop questions into the chat as you go. And then when we finish up the presentations, I'm going to start at the beginning and work my way through them. If they're directed at a specific speaker, just let me know. Make sure I know which speaker it's directed at. Last couple things are that we are recording. So if for some reason you feel like you need to jump off, we are going to post this to our YouTube channel tomorrow. We'll share it via our email e-newsletter and then also on our social media channels and everything as well. I think that covers it. So With that, I am going to turn it over to Adin first. He's going to talk about his through paddle, and then we'll hear from BobbiJo, and we'll hear from Jacob after that.
All right, let me just share the screen. How's that?
There it is. You're all good.
Perfect. All righty. My name is Adin. I'm 23. I did a through paddle this year. Uh, and I just threw a bunch of pictures together, and I'm just gonna kind of ramble about it, give you an overview of everything, not get into too many details. The first thing, all the pictures you see, I took them. I'm no photographer, but I brought a camera with me, and it was not easy keeping it dry and unbroken, but I managed to, and I got some pretty amazing pictures of wildlife. And anybody who does the trail, I would say definitely bring a camera because you get some amazing stuff. But start with planning. I was in my last semester of college when I decided to do this, so I had lots of time to not pay attention in class and do my planning. I spent, I figured about 400 hours planning the trip itself. Uh, I had no experience when it came to this kind of thing. I've camped maybe 2 nights before this in a row, a couple 2 night trips, and I grew up doing day trips, kayaking on a small river near us, but this was my first time doing any major trip. And when it came to planning, I used the Thru-Paddlers companion was the biggest one. I took that with me on the trip, and then this one, Northern Forest Canoe Trail paddling it. It's a more of a it's two photographers who did part of the trail, not a full through paddle. There's a lot of good pictures in here. The biggest one for this is their advice when it comes to gear, especially bug spray. I took a lot of their ideas for bug spray, which was needed. And then I spent a lot of time in class on Google Earth, Google Maps, and the NFCT trip planner. And I spent a lot of time just memorizing the portages, distances, all that kind of stuff. So I had a good idea of that side of it. When it came to the practical side of it, I had nothing. I started from scratch. I spent a lot of time and money putting together my setup, and but I wasn't able to use a lot of the stuff until the trip. And so I'll talk about that next. That was my setup. I decided if I spent a lot of money on a boat, then I would have to do the trip because I was still kind of going back and forth. So I bought the boat first. Chose a kayak because I spent my whole life in a kayak whenever I went out. Definitely not the lightest boat. This is a Wilderness System Tsunami 145, weighs about 60 pounds with nothing in it. And so it had its ups and downs, which I'll talk about. Biggest reason I chose it, I'll talk more about it later, is sealed compartments front and back. So even if I did flip, all my gear stayed dry. It was very nice. I bought the boat in the winter. I took it out to Skinny Atlas Lake out in Syracuse. I went to school once, put maybe 20 miles on it, and then packed the boat away and did nothing with it until I launched. When it came to my equipment, I put my wheels on once and went down the driveway and back. Put my tent up once, never slept in it, never set up the sleeping system. I am not the person to take advice from because I jumped right in a little too quick. And I'll say the first 3 days of the trip, I learned everything. I learned it the hard way, but it was a lot of fun. And yeah, I never weighed everything completely, but I'm sure it was around 100 pounds with everything. But these two pictures were taken the day before I left, and this was the first time I'd packed all my gear in my boat to see if it would even fit. When I was planning the trip, I was going on to the websites, the NRS website, and measuring the dimensions of each bag compared to the dimensions of the boat and where I'd place stuff, and kind of just hoping and praying everything would fit. And it was a full boat by the end of it, but it did fit, luckily. Uh, and yeah, so that's gear, boat. I took 2 paddles, obviously. That's about all I got for gear and boat. Pros. I love this kayak, but it was heavy. That's the one thing I'll talk about in cons. But it's got sealed compartments front and back. You can't sink the thing unless you do a lot of damage to it. That was my biggest thing. I was worried about big open water. I didn't have a lot of experience with that. And I knew if I rolled this boat in big water, I could either flip it back over. I had a pump here. I could pump it out, Or worst case scenario, I flip the boat, I can't get back in it. I would just grab the boat and the paddle and float to shore, and I'd be cold and wet, but the boat and all my gear would still be dry. So that was kind of the whole reason behind my setup, was I just wanted that sense of security. Looking back, might not have been worth it for the weight, but the bottom left corner, that was probably the worst wind I had. That was on Moosehead Lake up in Maine. I had a great tailwind. I was excited at the beginning of the day because I thought it's just going to push me right to the end. But by the time I got to the end of the lake, the waves were so big, it was just throwing me around. I ended up getting blown off and doing a little bit of a portage around. Uh, the picture in the middle with the sailboat, that's Champlain, another big water. Below that, I got caught in a rainstorm, and some of my favorite parts of the trip were the rain, because I could just put my raincoat on, my skirt, and I was just tucked away and warm, and it was a lot of fun, that part of it. I did enjoy it. And then right here, top right, is Spencer Stream, and I just put that there because I could throw that boat over anything. By the end of the trip, I was just couldn't carry any less, throwing it down rocks, and it just took the abuse. So it was the right boat for the first through paddle of mine. But when it came to the cons, top left is a lot of blowdowns like that. Getting in and out of that boat, not easy, especially on the knees. Spencer Stream, you get in and out of that thing. I don't know, felt like 100 times, and my knees felt it. Top right, it just shows my gear setup. All of my gear, because it was tucked away like this in the kayak, had to be put back in the exact same spot every time. So unpacking and repacking every time became a pain. And then below, the portages, those are three pictures from which one is that? Up in Maine, Mud Pond Carry. That's what it is. Mud Pond Carry. My setup, I managed to turn Mud Pond Carry from 1.5 miles into 7.5 miles. Non-wheelable portages for me were 3 trips. So you can see I dragged my boat first and then left it at the other end, half my gear, left it at the other end, and then ended up getting dark on me. So I just threw up my tent. And the next morning, this was my ridiculous setup to drag all my gear to the other end of the Mud Pond Carry. And so portages, the fun part of the whole trip. I did, when I first heard about the trail, they said, oh, all the books said 70 miles of portages. I said, no way. I'm not doing 70 miles of portaging. That sounds awful with 100 pounds of gear. I met a few people who had done the trail, and did some more reading. They said, no one's ever done the trail with less than 80. You're probably going to do around 100. And I was stubborn and said, yeah, no way. I'm not doing that. And then I ended up portaging a total of 162 miles, which I think a lot of people end up doing. Uh, when you're in the Adirondacks, it's pretty simple. You're going downstream, you've got your portages, you go around, but there's no major water or any issues at all. Then you get across Champlain to Vermont, and you go upstream, and you go from doing 20, 30 miles a day to doing 10 miles a day. In my case, I got to my first set of upstream rapids. I started lining up them. I tried different things, and I said, nope, this isn't for me. I can walk at 3 miles an hour. And I ended up just taking out, and I would look on maps. I would compare different maps and make my own portage route, whether it was roads. Luckily in Vermont, you've got the Missisquoi Valley Rail Trail. So over the next 2 days, I just walked the 25 miles to Canada. Uh, these, what you're looking at here is just added portages. These are all the portages that are not official. I created these myself to get around upstream paddling, to get around areas I just didn't really want to go through, or if the water was too low. Uh, the only few that are really kind of important, Newport to West Charleston, that's after you come down back into the US out of Canada. I was reading about the next section that it was a lot of getting in and out of the boat, a kind of difficult section, and I was getting stressed about it when I was up in Canada, and I just decided, why am I stressing? They paved roads for a reason, just start walking. And that was a hard one because it was very hilly, and I was trying to stay off of, I believe it's Vermont Route 5 is a busy road with no shoulder. So I was taking some back roads. And then the other big one was 22 miles Rangeley to Stratton. The Dead River was pretty low. I probably could have done it, but again, I could walk at 3 miles an hour. So I just went for it. And And then other than that, yeah, the portaging is a lot more than a lot of people think. And I was kind of arrogant and said I wasn't going to portage, but I learned very quickly that I had to. And yeah, let's see. What would I do different? I do want to do the trail again. I think the goal next time is a much lighter boat. I'd have to change a lot of things when it comes to that, not just running rapids and stuff like that. But my goal is to just, when I get to a portage, I pick up the boat, I strap my wheels to my backpack, I pick up my backpack, and I just go one trip. I figure I wasted about probably 2 days of the trip just in portages going back and forth. Like I said, it was 3 trips back and forth, and it was brutal. And those are the only things I really do different. Best parts, Umbagog Lake is the top left. No, that's Flagstaff. Sorry, Flagstaff Lake was gorgeous, had an amazing sunset. The middle 3 are Champlain. I got to a hotel. I stayed 2 nights in a hotel while I waited for my father. He crossed Champlain with me in his sailboat, and I was not leaving my boat outside, so I managed to cram that in the hotel room with me. Uh, Top left, Flagstaff Lake, and then below that's the Penobscot. That's my favorite picture from the trip. That moose. That was after Moosehead Lake. I was real tired, but it was raining. I was warm inside my boat and just floating down the river. I was downstream, so I was happy about that. And then bottom right, I think that's Moosehead Lake. And I just put that in because there's a lot of times you're on big water and you're just paddling nonstop and you're not thinking about anything or looking at anything. And you would pull over to take a leak or eat a snack or just take a break. And you'd kind of settle down and look around and be like, oh, I'm in an amazing place right now. And I should probably enjoy it for a little bit instead of torturing myself. But worst parts, I thought about this a lot. Looking back, there's only one part of the trail that I do not want to do again at all. You obviously have your bad days, the bad sections, but I didn't even label this because you can see how miserable I am. This was the Rapid River Carry. I'm holding back a lot of bad words about this carry. It was awful. The first eighth of a mile is non-wheelable, and then the next 3 miles are barely wheelable. Part of it was the weather. It was cold. It had been raining the day before. I just paddled till dark because I wanted to get into Maine. And it was a mental thing too. The whole trip, everybody talks about Maine. It's the best part. It's the best part. It's the most beautiful part. And so I said, I'm just going to go for it. I paddled across Umbagog Lake, mostly in the dark. Got to camp. Mosquitoes were horrible. The next day I woke up. I'm in Maine. This is amazing. And then just hit with this, and it just killed me. Mosquitoes were horrendous, and just not a fun part of the trail for me. But that was the only really bad day, I would say. And it was only in the morning. It took me probably 2 hours to get through it. And then I was on Lower Richardson Lake, and the rest of Maine was stunning and amazing. Spencer Stream and Little Spencer Stream, they're difficult, but they're gorgeous. You feel like you're in the middle of nowhere. I was worried about that, but it wasn't as bad as people made it out to be. But Rapid River Carry, if you're doing a through paddle, it's not enjoyable. And that's about it. There's me, scrawny college kid who had no idea what he was getting into. Full trip, I did 735 miles, and then at the end, I still have no idea what I'm doing, but I completed the trail, so I did something right, I guess. And my email's there. I only put that because when I was doing my planning, I had really wished I could just find somebody who had done a through paddle recently and just ask them some questions. So if anybody wants to reach out, that's my email. We'll get in touch. I'll get you on the phone or something. I won't give you any advice or tell you what to do because I didn't know what I was doing, but I'll tell you what I did and why I did it. And I wish I had somebody to just ask questions to. But that's all I got.
All right, thanks so much, Adin. I just see one question there for in the chat for you at the moment, so I'll ask it.
Yeah.
What dates did you start your trip?
June 5th. Yeah, June 5th to July, I think 6th, I got picked up. I was lucky. I wasn't set on a schedule. I just decided, I said the first 3 nice days uh, that I see good weather, I'm just going to go because, like I said, I didn't have any experience. So I wanted the first 3 days to maybe not have rain. And I was lucky. And so, yeah, June 5th to July something. It took me 33 days in total.
Oh, thank you. All right, thanks, Adin. We're gonna switch over to BobbiJo now. So Aiden's going to stop sharing his screen. BobbiJo is going to share hers, and then we'll keep it rolling. And remember, everyone, to ask your questions in the chat as we go.
Well, Adin gave me a really good warm up. I actually contacted him a lot throughout our trip because he was a little bit ahead of me. We left on June 27th. And it was funny because when we got to our trail angels at the Plumidor house, they were actually tracking him on his Garmin. So we were actually able to watch and see where he was. It felt kind of stalkerish, but it was pretty cool to see where he was. And I reached out a couple times because you just, as much experience that we had, it was, well, me, not so much my partner, but we still just, there were so many questions along the way of, am I doing this right? Being a first timer, we just had so many questions. I read both of the handbooks, did a whole bunch of research. I think Adin mentioned that he did hours upon hours upon hours of planning. And, we were definitely in the same boat, no pun intended. But you still get in there, and when you're in it, you just have so many questions and you kind of second guess yourself all of the time. So as I mentioned to the group before everyone else joined in, I have a Mac computer, so my PowerPoint is not going to work through here, but I'm just going to share. I made a folder of different pictures for you. So I'll kind of try to talk you through what we're looking at here. So the pictures are a little bit small, but obviously it was when we started, my partner Chrissy and I. We started June 27th because I'm a teacher, so I had to wait until school was over, and we literally left the day after school ended here for me in New York. You can kind of see our setup here. We obviously had an Old Town Saranac 146. And I actually had the same wheels as Adin, and I know that he would back me up with saying those are the best wheels. Would highly recommend them to anybody. Those are the easy suspends. And I've had other wheels in the past, and nothing holds the weight like they do. We had a huge canoe. We had a ton of weight. Our bags, were really, really big, and it held all of our gear and some, and it traveled all those miles. You can kind of see here, we took our paddle and we actually ended up tying it to the front of our boat because we both felt it easier. We tried different ways to do our portages, but we ended up finding it easier to take our paddle and tie it up in the front. And we both used it as leverage, and we both walked it from the front, and we ended up doing over 160 miles worth of portaging that way, and it worked out really well for us. I threw a picture of our trail angels in there. Those are the Plumidors. You literally go past their house. We got out when we were at when we were on the Saranac. We were walking right past their house. Everything's failing me now because all of my memories are in my notebook. So but they are absolutely awesome. They had a welcome sign for us, and they have all of their guests sign in their guest book and everything. They have a through trail paddler guide and everything. So everyone got to sign in. We stayed with them for the night, got to shower and everything. That was awesome. That's just a picture of us at the border crossing. We had we had two hurricanes hit while we were going through. The first hurricane hit when we were on the Missisquoi, so we ended up having to walk majority of it on the Missisquoi Valley Rail Trail, and this was us crossing into the border. And I do have a video of what the Missisquoi looked like. This was actually the gauge reading on the Missisquoi when the hurricane hit. So you can see that it jumps from a 3 to an 8, and it was just overnight, so it came up quite a bit. When we were going over the border, let's see if I can find it here. Sorry guys, you're gonna have to bear with me here. I had this whole nice presentation. So this is when we were going through the border crossing. We had just gone through US Customs. This is the Missisquoi. You can see it's up pretty high. No chance we're gonna be going upstream against that. So there's just a lot of debris in the water, and it was not a safe place to be for sure. This was the morning that we started. The second morning we were on Lake Champlain. We started Lake Champlain about 4 o'clock in the morning. We launched, so it was pretty dark when we launched. And we did the second half. We stayed on North Hero Island the first night. And my paddle partner was actually sick the entire day that we did Lake Champlain. So she was throwing up over the side of the boat the entire day. But this was the sunrise that we had the next morning to get up to the Missisquoi. It was pretty awesome. Very buggy though, like mosquitoes were really, really bad there. This is when we got to Canoe and Co. I did not expect this, not my first time up north in Canada, but I just didn't realize how much French there would actually be on all of the signs. But everyone was super friendly there. They let us stay there for the night, especially because the river was still really high from the hurricane. So they didn't mind if we stayed there at all. And they were actually battling flood themselves. A lot of their, they had to shut down for the day. A lot of their whole boat launch was completely mud. This is just a kind of a glimpse of what we were portaging with. You can see the paddle here in the front. We had tied on for leverage. We used 2 5-gallon buckets to pack all of our food and the stuff we use to make the food in, and our 2 big bags there. This couple here was doing the Northern Forest Canoe Trail in sections, and they would actually, they had 2 cars and a trailer. So they would take their trailer and park it at the end, and they would paddle downstream through all of the upstream sections. And we kept bumping into them along the way as we were working our way upstream. And they were always making sure that we had like snacks. She was always concerned that we needed snacks. So we ran into them a lot along the way. Just another group of trail angels. And as Adin mentioned, the Rapid River Carry, this was at the during that Rapid River Carry, we were completely exhausted. The bugs were horrible. It was extremely humid. We were in our super cool fashion bug suits. But yeah, we had just absolutely miserable. We did not, as much as we had the wheels on, it was super difficult to wheel the boat with that much weight. There was just a lot of jarring, and we had to readjust the wheels several times because it would just bump everything out of place. We were just, it was not one of our happier times, that's for sure. When we were doing our trip, we actually did a fundraiser for Tunnel to Towers, and we had no idea that this actually was along the trail. This is the Halfway Hilton, and this lean-to specifically had these decorations, and we were completely blown away when we saw this. It was like, fate, as you will. But Tunnel to Towers does, it was a foundation that was created from 9/11. So when we saw this, it was just, you know, it was heartwarming and kind of just keeping us going, that's for sure. The main roadhouse, this, from people that I've talked to that have done this trail, this is, I don't know how, at what point they started this, but this was a hostel that we stayed at along the way. And it was worth literally every penny. We were exhausted. We had been walking that whole entire section of the Dead River, and we came upon this place, and they were just like, it was like the home away from home. They were so happy to have us. They fed us, they let us use their kitchen. You know, we got to do our laundry, and it was just such a good pick me up before the last bit of the trail. Grand Falls, this was one of my favorite days, and it was, you know, just, it was like the calm before the storm. It was so nice to see this, because right before, right after we got through looking at this, we went up Spencer Stream, and that was the day that we went a grand total of 3 miles for the day. We were going upstream, and I can tell you that I have never had so many horse flies in all of my life. I think I stopped counting at 30, and we were just battling nonstop. So they were rough. We had our bug suits on. We were going upstream. We were walking the boat because the water was low. And we came to this corner, this bend in the river, and we went off like we kind of cut the corner because we were like, well, why would we go around this island? There's this little island on the corner there. And we were so busy swatting at the horseflies that we didn't realize I wasn't really paying attention to the GPS for like the first time in the entire trip. And we actually missed the turn. And we ended up going upstream for 2 hours in the wrong direction. And it was like the worst day of the trip. Talk about not having the best words coming out of my mouth. And we didn't realize until 2 hours later, and we stopped for lunch and I pulled up the GPS and we realized how far off we were. We were like parallel, but we were just not where we should be. And we realized that we had gone 2.5 hours upstream on the wrong stream. So we had to go 2.5 hours back down. And it was just an absolute nightmare. That was by far the very worst day of the trip. Mud Pond Carry, we did it before and after. Obviously, we had done a lot of research on this one, and we were like, well, everything is nice and clean. We'll do a before picture of all of our gear and an after picture. And as the books describe, it was absolutely horrible. One of our GoPro, a little bit of our GoPro footage for this one, just kind of get an idea of what we were going through. A lot of these puddles were, if not ankle deep, knee deep. And that was a good chunk of the trail. And, you know, obviously our wheels aren't going to work here. So we had to carry our gear. We moved our boat first and then we went back for our gear. So we ended up doing the entirety of it 2 different times. But looking back on it now, we wouldn't have done it any other way because that was just kind of all part of the experience of it. But just absolutely miserable. But all part of the experience. All right, hang on, I'm trying to get out of here. There we go. Boots out back. Obviously it was buggy, so we had our bug suits on, and my partner is thigh deep there in mud, because you would think that after you get done with the mud pond carry that you get to this pond and you're like, woohoo, you know, we're finally at water, we can kind of clear off all of our gear. Mud pond was literally maybe about a depth of, I don't know, at maximum 5 feet the entire time we were going across it. It was just like we got done with mud pond carry and we just found more mud. So it was like we were waiting for that relief, and we just didn't get it until after the fact. This was after we took our boots off. I ended up throwing this pair of boots out. They were just absolutely shredded. Anyone that tries to do that with just sandals on is crazy. But we ended up getting a nice view afterwards, so it was worth it at the end. This was Mud Brook. So after Mud Pond Carry, we got to Mud Brook and Mud Pond, and the leeches that are there are huge. This was one of 6 that I pulled off of just that 1 foot. So I just had to make sure I got a picture of that one, because were the biggest leeches I've literally ever seen, and the only leeches that we pretty much encountered the entire trip, but they were massive. One of my favorite pictures on the trip there, those were the good parts of the trip, like right at the end. And that's at the last ranger station right before we get to the St. John. Last portage. Super pumped for that one. That was the 2 rivers in Allagash where we stayed one of our last nights. We actually stayed there. I think it was our second to last night that we stayed there, and we stopped there for lunch, and turns out they have a hostel that's literally attached to the restaurant itself. So when you stop there, meet the manager, and you know, she'll let you stay at the hostel that's attached to there. And we got to do, you know, our laundry, take showers and everything, which was nice because it had been a couple of days. Last night on the St. John River from Pelletiers. That was the second hurricane. That was Hurricane Debbie. We were already in Fort Kent for this, so we actually got to see it on the radar from the safety of the town. We had set up our tent and everything, but then after we got everything set up and in our tent, we wandered into town just so that we were, you know, getting something to eat. And we had the entire day. We were getting picked up the next day. And this was Saturday, August 10th, when our husbands were finally able to meet up with us and pick us up. And as I had mentioned, we did a fundraiser while we were doing it for Tunnel to Towers. My husband's law enforcement, and Chrissy's husband is actually retiring tomorrow from the Navy. He's a helicopter pilot. So growing up in New York and, you know, remembering 9/11 very vividly, this was really something that meant a lot to us. We go down and do the 5K every year. And this was at this last September's 5K. We raised over $9,000 on our paddle. And then where we were presenting our donation check, the bar that we were at upped it to 10,000. So we ended up raising 10,000 for Tunnel to Towers. And that was kind of just our boat setup, our old town. Pros about the boat, obviously it's a solid boat. You know, I would absolutely take it on that trip again. Cons just being that it was extremely heavy. You know, especially with all of our gear in it, but we had a solid set of wheels. So as much as it was heavy, yeah, it was a pain when we couldn't get wheels on. Obviously, when we couldn't use wheels, it was an issue. But majority of the time that we were portaging, which ended up being, you know, over 160 miles, it was nice to have those wheels for us. Couple of just videos that we took. I had wished, Adin said that he took his camera with him. I purposely did not take mine because I was really worried about trying to keep it safe. So I only had the phones and my GoPro, but this was probably my favorite day. I wanted to encounter a moose on all my trips. So I was really pumped to see this. This was on the Moose River. And just an absolutely awesome experience to get to see a moose close like that. We actually ran into a moose on the Nulkegan River. That was the closest I've ever been to a moose, and it actually terrified me. We came around the corner and she was just standing right on the edge, and it was just absolutely it was one of those moments where we just kind of froze. Second favorite experience was seeing these otters. They were just so cool and so curious about what we were doing. And that was really the only other, besides the moose, the only other you know, animal experience that I really wanted to see. Have them here on the Susquehanna River, which is where I grew up. I've canoed the Susquehanna River 2 times from Cooperstown to Havre de Grace, Maryland. And we have them here, but I've never really gotten a chance to see them up close like that. So I was really looking forward to it. And I got a chance to see it, which was awesome. But yeah, I feel bad that the presentation isn't a lot better. The teacher in me wants it to be better, but unfortunately with the Mac that I have, the PowerPoint just doesn't work for me.
You did great, BobbiJo. Thank you so much. Keep asking questions in the chat. We're gonna have Jacob do his presentation now, and then we'll run through your questions when we get to the end. Jacob, if you're ready, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, yeah, let me toss my presentation up here real quick. All right, cool. Can you guys see it?
Yep.
You're good.
All right,
yep.
cool. Yeah, so I wasn't sure what to title this, and you know, honestly, during the trip, we did so much walking, I was starting to get anxious, like, man, is this even like a paddling trip anymore? Or like, you know, we were kind of going for speed on our trip, and it's reassuring to hear the other Thru-Paddlers talk about how much they walked, because at times it felt like we were cheating, but I guess not. I guess it's just the way it goes. So anyway, so originally I was going to do this trip solo, and I'm a teacher, so I got the time in the summer. And a buddy of mine mentioned that he was willing to go, but he had some time constraints for work. He's also kind of like a ultra runner, kind of athlete guy. So he was into doing like something intense and like hardcore. So we just started looking at like how quickly could we do it then? You know, I think he had like 21 days max that he could like put together. And he's like, but what if we went faster than that? So we kind of made up our spreadsheet of like mileage and days. And we finally came up with 16 days is what our initial goal was. And kind of what our target was. And I have to say, like when I saw people signing on, I saw some like kind of heavy hitter names join the presentation. Peter McFarlane, I think is how you say the last name. I read his blog at 2012 or 13 maybe, and it was like a major inspiration for me to do this trip. And I can't say how many times I went back and read that for like information to guide through different sections. I mean, however many years later, 11 years later since I read it, and so much of it was still accurate and like motivational. So it was that was a huge resource for me. So anyway, so we decided to build our own boat. I had made a skin on frame canoe for myself a year before this when I was going to go solo. And the reason for this is I knew that we were going to do some walking, and we initially decided to not use any wheels. Again, Peter McFarlane's blog, he didn't use.
Hey, Jacob, your audio cut out, it seems.
Oh, am I back in?
There you are. You're back. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So it ended up being a good boat for the trip. It handled the big water really well. It didn't turn super nice in the rivers, but we didn't really have too much of an issue with that. I mean, I can't say that I would recommend everybody build a boat like this. It's not within everybody's wheelhouse, I guess, to do. But for us, it worked really well. Like there were some pretty big, like wave days, like on Moosehead Lake, that I think if we'd have had like a smaller boat, or didn't have the spray deck, we wouldn't have been able to push through. So and it worked out really well for us. And we named it Gungnir, which is the name of Odin's spear. And according to that mythology, like anybody who uses a spear, whether they knew how to or not, would never miss. So it was like, we would hit our goal. But on the trip, we kind of made a joke that like it never missed like every single rock in the river because we just hit a ton of rocks on our way. I got a bit of paddling experience. Grew up paddling in Ohio on the Cuyahoga River. But my buddy had been in a boat like twice ever, and he was in the front. He's a bit smaller than me, and I was in the stern. And he learned on the trip like how to read the river. And so yeah, we smacked a bunch of rocks, but it ended up being okay. So anyway,
it might just be me, but I lost your presentation.
Oh, is it not up anymore? Can anybody else see it?
Nope.
I'm not seeing that there either, Jacob.
Okay.
Make sure you're still set as a co-host. Hold on one sec.
Yeah.
It disappeared when Chris chimed in earlier.
Oh no.
Hold on one second, Jacob. I'm gonna make sure. I wonder if no, you still have co-host permission, so you should.
Okay, let me reshare it. Sorry about that.
That's all. Hey, it's all good. It's Zoom. It's never perfect.
Yeah. All right.
There you go.
We back. All right. So, and again, there's the boat. So the cart, we decided again not to use the cart. We ended up carrying a bunch, and it was like really taking a pretty physical toll on us. Like we were just unable to. So again, like everybody else on the Missisquoi, we were walking up the rail trail, and I contacted my wife and was like, you got to try to get us a cart. So she found like the cheapest one, or like not even the cheapest, the one that would get to us the fastest on Amazon, and delivered it to a post office there. It ended up being like Amazon said it would come in a day, and it ended up coming a little bit longer than that. So we ended up losing like about 24 hours in Richford waiting for the canoe cart. But it was it was amazing. Anybody who's going with like a larger boat, a heavier boat, I would recommend getting a cart and like a robust one. We had to baby ours. I don't know if you can see that picture kind of on the bottom left there. It's not a great one. I think it's more for like a kayak. I don't know, but we were constantly like keeping our fingers crossed that it would kind of hold together because we didn't want to go back to carrying it. It was pretty gnarly. It took a physical toll on us. So people along the way, just wanted to shout out all the people that we met. You know, like we would be walking across a road and somebody pull their truck over and they'd jump out with bug spray and spray it on our legs for us, or you know, just do all kinds of nice things. And it's just like, it was refreshing to know that like that goodness and humanity is out there. There's people that care. They see you're struggling through something and they want to help. You know, all the people that tempted us with rides along the way. So, you know, they didn't know that they were tempting us, but they were trying to do like just something nice. So logistics, we had 2 planned mail drops and one of them failed. I don't know if my buddy didn't mail it right or something happened. So we got to the first mail drop and there was nothing there for us, but we got the second one. And then we just bought food at like the grocery stores along the way. There were plenty of those to kind of get through. We brought the maps with us. You know, I had like the map case. Didn't really use those too much after like the first day or two, maybe in the evening when we were looking at stuff. But that Far Out app, I mean, I can't recommend it enough for anybody who's thinking about doing the through paddle. It was like fairly accurate. And just helps you really navigate a lot of those, like when you're heading to a portage and there's like a cove or you're trying to pull into something and you can't, you know, you're just kind of guessing at where you're going. It was like really nice to kind of pinpoint it. And I mean, for us, we were going fast. So, yeah, I mean, it really, really helped us out. So I figured I'd start with the logistics of kind of stuff of our trip, and then I'd just run through quickly like our day to day, show you guys some of the mileage that we did, and maybe talk about high points and low points of like.
Well, your audio cut out for just a second there, Jacob.
Okay, can you still see my presentation?
Yep, you're good, and you're back on there.
Okay, sorry, but I think my internet at home isn't great. Anyway, so first day, Old Forge to Long Lake. We got a pretty early start, and then most days we stopped around dark. So I think it was like 9:30-ish that we stopped. Maybe a little early on this one. I think we were worried about getting to the next site. Buggy site, but pretty nice, easy to find, all really nice waterways. And the Racket River there, I think after the Brown track carry, it's like just so many beaver dams. I was like, oh, we're going to see some beaver dams on this trip. And it's just like, we just saw so many beaver dams. I don't want to ever see one again. I was a little bit worried about our boat, like pulling it over top of those with all the sticks, but the boat held up pretty well, I think, with that kind of abuse. Day 2, 52 miles ish to the Union Fall, from Lost Channel to Union Falls Pond. Again, some highlights of that day were like going through the locks, which were cool. We were just going to portage, but it just happened to open up. Somebody came out, so we were able to scoot in real quick. Kind of, you know, early on the trip was nice, like lots of big not really like huge lakes compared to some of the ones you're on the trip, but like decent sized lakes. The weather was calm for us, so we were able to kind of scoot along pretty quickly, and morale was pretty high here. Union Falls Pond to Treadwell Mills Dam. This was brutal. We got to the like Claysburg, that carry there, and then we wanted to get back on the Saranac, but like there was just no water. So I mean, we tried. We got on and we went maybe a couple hundred yards, and then we finally just like took out in somebody's backyard, and they were like, "Oh, the water's super down. You're not going to be able to get on for like, you know." So I don't even remember what little town or little like area we went through, but we got out and started walking, and yeah, it's just we just couldn't get any like, you know, momentum going on the river at this point. And yeah, again, you could see by my buddy Monty's face that we weren't super psyched on it. Treadwell Mills to Swanton. This was a decent day mileage for us. We got lucky with the weather, and Lake Champlain was really calm. But one thing I didn't really think about too much ahead of time, like I knew there were places you couldn't filter the water, but because we were in such a rush and because we had been walking so much, we didn't want to carry too much water with us for the weight. We didn't have very much water on Lake Champlain. So like near the end of the day, my buddy, you could see his picture in the middle there. He didn't have like a nice sun hat or like a sun shirt. It was just some like, he got like sun poisoning. So we were both like super lethargic by the end of the day. And it kind of got desperate there. We stopped at a couple houses and people gave us some water. But again, we weren't really thinking clearly because of this, like, the time in the sun. And instead of asking to fill up like our 12-liter filter, we just had them fill up our little like Nalgene's. So we would like run out really quick, and it was kind of awful. We got off the water, my buddy like threw up, and like we almost just like lay down and slept where we were. But we ended up walking kind of up over at the takeout up to a pizza place and got some pizza and salad and like just a ton of water, and kind of brought us back to life a little bit. But after that point, we were like, okay, no more. We'll just have to deal with a little bit of extra water weight, because like that kind of thing we knew would end our trip if we weren't careful. So swatting to Abbey Rapids, Abbey Rapids, just a 25-mile day. We kind of got beat up going upstream in these, in like kind of like the low-ish water. I was being stubborn. I didn't want to walk. I mean, it was like a water trip. I was like, well, if it just takes us longer, it takes us longer. But the boat could only take so much. It's like a nylon fabric with a 2-part polyurethane on it, and like so much scraping is just going to wear that away. So we decided to take out eventually, and we ended up kind of just camping on that rail trail. We walked to Richford. I don't have any good pictures here because it was just a brutal walk. We kind of set ourselves a schedule and then tried to, and I think that day we had like 15 miles to get to Richford. And then I just sat in the post office for the rest of the day and waited for the wheels to come in. And I took the opportunity to charge our battery banks. After that, we hit the road. We walked to the border, put in, and we made it to Perkins Landing. One of the coolest sunsets of the trip. Maybe I said this to myself maybe a handful of times, but it was pretty cool hiking or walking up over the portage and just like looking like there's a forest fire on the other side of that hill there. It was pretty awesome. It was also about this time that like the rain picked up and just wouldn't stop. So that was kind of fun to deal with. And we were not tucked in. Perkins Landing to the tubes, we decided to take out we got through the fen. We decided to take out at the tubes and do some walk from there. That campsite was kind of brutal. We like just camped right there where I think there's like a parking lot, and it was just like so buggy. They were tearing us up. I feel like I'm running short on time, so I'm flying through here. So if anybody has any questions afterwards about any of this. The Connecticut might have been my favorite river, and I think that was because it was like plenty of water and it was moving quick. So I think we went down the Connecticut. We were going like a little over 5 miles an hour. I think we just like blasted through it, and we were kind of in a time crunch. So it was like kind of refreshing. We had done so much walking and like just grueling, like paddling upstream, that like this nice down stream little trip was like, it was actually kind of fun. It's like the first fun we'd had on the trip in a couple of days. Let's see. After that, we made it to Errol, and we kind of walked our way across New Hampshire. We got to the Androscoggin, and it was mid to late afternoon, and we knew that there were a bunch of like flat water, but then there were some like rapids we'd have to go up, and we weren't sure about how we would get out of the water and like portage around them. So we decided just to take out early, and we would walk to Errol. So we walked maybe 12 or 13 miles, and we were like, well, since it's dark, we don't have to worry about getting off, like being safe in the water or whatever. We'll just walk until we get there. So we rolled into Errol around 11:30 or midnight, and then just like found like a dark corner somewhere and laid out on the ground and passed out. So we didn't really even set up tents or anything. We just like lay down and slept, and then got up the next morning around 5 or 5:30 to on our way to Stratton. So the picture of the mean portage is the one that the first two presenters talked about. That was kind of a nasty portage there. I remember thinking or saying multiple times, there's no way this is wheelable. Like there's no way anybody's wheeling this. Like I kind of half carried our boat through like half of it, even though it had the portage wheels on the bottom of it. On the way to Stratton, we were going to walk through the night again, but like around 10:30, both of us were kind of falling asleep on our feet. walking, and we were like, okay, we'll just find some place to stay. And it just so happened that somebody pulled over in a truck and was like, hey, you want to ride? And we said no. But we're like, do you know anywhere? If there are there any like pull offs like coming up where we could like stop and sleep? There was nothing on the side of the highway where we were walking. And it was a super nice lady who was like, oh yeah, up a ways, like a couple hundred yards, there's a pull off on the right. You could sleep there. So we get to walking and we come across like this logging, this like lumber yard. I don't think that's what she was talking about. Um, but we camped there for the night. And it was another rainy, buggy, kind of miserable night that was just kind of brutal, but I kind of got through it. This one might have been one of my favorite days. We actually took like a 5-minute nap on Flagstaff. We were just like so beat up. You can see that on the bottom left. We kind of laid down. I fell asleep for maybe 5 minutes, woke up in a start and started paddling. And then paddling into the Island of the Giants at like 9:30 or so was really nice. We were feeling pretty good here. A couple of bigger days after some of those shorter ones. Getting to Adin Falls, we came up a no, we got there. Yeah, the Spencer Stream was brutal for us. I think we were going like 1 mile an hour up it. The water was so low, we were just basically carrying the boat over like large sections of it. And it would be like super shallow and then super deep. Super shallow, no, not super deep, but like waist deep. So you couldn't just walk the whole way. It was in and out of the boat, and it was mentally super frustrating. But like the other two presenters said, it's just so beautiful that we would rage and get mad, and then you would just kind of look around and be like, okay, it's a price worth paying for where we're at. So from Andean Falls to Big Duck Cove on Moosehead Lake, this might have been my favorite campsite, and that might have been because the previous nights were just like on the side of the road or like out in the middle of nowhere. We didn't set up we stayed in hammocks. We didn't set them up. We just slept on the ground. The waves were getting kind of big. There was a kind of a decent headwind we were paddling into. So reaching camp again, it was maybe 9:30 or 10 o'clock when we got there. Made a quick fire, ate, and warmed up because we were freezing after getting off the water. It was pretty nice. Pretty nice campsite. A little hard to find, honestly, but it was nice. After that, we made it to our Northwest general store. And we told them where we'd come from the day before, and everybody in the shop kind of like looked around like, you guys were out on the lake yesterday, like which at the time, I mean, there were some waves crashing over the front of the boat like every once in a while, but it wasn't. So it was like right borderline. It didn't feel super dangerous, but it was. Again, thankfully we had like a larger boat with that spray deck, so we were able to handle it. And then getting through Mud Pond Carry was tough for me. We had single carried everything. We had a kind of a hard time finding the entrance to the carry, hard time getting the boat through the brush and stuff into like a small clearing. And then just with all of our gear and being so tired, my buddy was like, we need to just double carry this, which was hard for me. I didn't want to. So we ended up like, I just wanted to get through it and keep moving. But we ended up double carrying that one. It was one of the few portages we double carried. And it was tough. It was a tough one because you would be walking along and all of a sudden you'd hit some mud and you would sink down to your knee. And I'm glad we didn't have the boat on top of our head for that, because it would have been, at the pace we were going, we could have easily hurt ourselves. I'll go back a second. We rolled into Chamberlain Lake right around 10 o'clock, 10:30. It was dark. The wind died down. We'd been battling like a headwind, and we almost kept going, just like paddling through because the wind had died down. We wanted to get some more distance in. But we just knew with how tired we were and it being dark, it just didn't make sense. So I'm glad we stopped. And then Chamberlain Lake, we made it to Round Pond. We got to meet the NFCT crew, NFCT crew, which was really cool. We saw lynx when we were paddling through one of the waterways, which was pretty rad. I didn't expect to see one of those. I remember when we went through, I forget off the top of my head now, where the crew was staying. It was like when you enter the Allagash waterway, there's like a set of rapids there that are famous. They like let water out of the dam so people can run them. And the NFCT guy we were talking to, we were a little worried about it. And he's like, "Oh, with everything you guys have done, you'll be fine on this. You'll be just fine." And like honestly, through a lot of the trip, we had like lined or walked the boat through a lot of rapids because of low water or just being worried about our boat. So we kind of looked at each other. That's like, I mean, there's no way around this, so we just got to go for it. Hopefully, this close to the end, we don't like totally wipe out. And we ended up running them pretty clean, so I was pretty happy about that. We'd come quite a ways in our paddling experience. And then the last day, we were kind of up against the clock. We made 62 miles. We got up maybe at 4 o'clock in the morning, and just like went as hard as we could all day long. The last like half of the day was pretty brutal. We were fighting fatigue pretty bad. The boat was taking on water pretty consistently. You could see from that middle picture there, there's just a ton of duct tape on the bottom of it. And shout out to the ranger at like the checkout station, because he hooked us up with some more duct tape. We were like, "All right, do you have any here?" And he like looked around his cabin and found some for us, and kind of helped get us through. But yeah, I kind of rambled there, but that's it in a nutshell. For my presentation, it was a whirlwind trip. I wish, in hindsight, I could have spent more time enjoying some sections, but like the constant pursuit of like time and pace were, it was fun also. So that's it for me.
Jacob, thank you so much. I really appreciate that we got kind of a really cool range of experiences here. We had, a couple people go as duos. We had somebody who just sort of dived in with a kayak. We had Jacob and his partner setting a pretty fast pace for others to live up to if they want to try that out. So I thank you all for that. It looked like in the chat, a lot of folks were sort of answering each other's questions, which is great. I did want to see if the three of you could just address. I know this comes up a lot, and especially right now, unfortunately, the border crossing in Vermont. If one or each of you could just talk through that aspect of the trip and how that worked for you guys. We do have information on our website too, but I think people would love to hear it right from you all. Jacob, since you're right there on the screen for me, why don't you answer
Sure.
that?
Yeah. So for us, like our cart came in around 1 o'clock in Richford. So we were like, we knew it closed at 4, which was kind of frustrating. So we like strapped that baby on, hit the road, and like tried to get there as fast as we could. The US side, super friendly. They were really nice. The Canadian side, they were pretty down to business. It was weird though. Once you go to the Canadian side, there's no put in over there. So you have to like walk back to the American side and put in on that side. And I was like, so do we have to like recheck in once we go back into Canada?
Oops, lost your sound again there, Jacob. Well, Jacob, we lost your sound again there for a few seconds. But maybe BobbiJo or Adin, do you want to talk through your experience with the border?
Same thing, pretty much. It's a little confusing at first. You walk in the American side, they don't care that you're going into Canada. It's not their problem. They send you up the road. You walk quarter mile up into Canada. They were down to business, but they didn't tear my boat apart or anything. Just checked in, passport, told them I had some bear spray. That was it. And then it is weird. You walk back into the U.S., kind of through the backyard of the building and put in and head up. But Bobby did something different because of the hurricane, obviously. So I'm sure she can elaborate.
Yeah, I mean, we walked from East Highgate all the way to Canoeing Cove. So, I mean, we traveled a lot on foot. I mean, when we rolled up to U.S. Customs, the border officer begged and pleaded me to not put my boat in, and I was like, "There's no chance we're putting in. We're going upstream." And same as what Adin said. You got to Canadian Customs, and they were pretty down to business. They didn't tear any of our boat apart. They just they more wanted to know if we were carrying any drugs or alcohol. That was pretty much it. They actually asked me about knives. There's a certain legality with the knives, and you need to be able to like open it and close it with one hand. So that's what they looked for. So when they asked me if I had a knife, I instantly said, "Well, yeah, I've got my pocket knife," because who wouldn't on that trip? And they just wanted to look at it and make sure that you could actually open it and close it with just one hand. But that was really the only thing that they looked for, really.
Great, thank you. I saw a question from Mark Joyce about through paddling and pack boats, and I can confirm that we've seen some folks do that over the years. I can't specifically tell you which brands of pack boats they've used, but we have seen that for sure. We've run past our 1 hour, and I really do love trying to keep these to 1 hour, especially for the people who want to watch them back on YouTube. I did put in the link there, or in the link, sorry, the chat, a link to the NFCT Thru-Paddlers Facebook group. I know a lot of the names on this session tonight, so I know a lot of you are already in there. But if you're not, I would definitely go request to become a member. I filter through those and accept them pretty quick. Just make sure that you fill out the one field that says, how did you hear about us? Because that's how I make sure you're not a bot. But that's a really phenomenal resource, this whole community that you've seen here tonight, BobbiJo and Jacob and Adin and Peter. And I think I saw Katina on here and Austin. Like, there's a really great little community in that group of folks who share information and resources. They provide some sort of like real-time updates on water conditions and trail conditions and things like that. So, and yes, there is another one called NFCT Trail Angels that Sherry started up. Can you put that link in the chat too before I kick everybody out, just so they have a chance to take a look at it? Oh, you didn't start it. Okay, got it. All right, well, we won't worry about it. I'll when I put this info out in the e-news tomorrow with the link to the YouTube video, I'll try and share that in there. I do have that somewhere handy. So, all right, so I'm gonna wrap things up there. I want to say thank you again to BobbiJo, to Adin, and to Jacob for joining us tonight. I have so much respect for the folks who decide to set out and do this whole thing in one season like that. It's not easy. And it's so fun to listen to the stories that you hear. And it's always really great to hear just how wonderful everybody you meet along the way is too. So thank you all. Thanks everybody for joining us. This might be our last virtual session because we're getting into that time of year where we do things not virtually. We see everybody out in the community. So hope to see y'all soon. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Thank you, guys.